Hi, welcome back. My name is Jeff Bertoft, and we welcome you back to Windows 8.1 Developer Geek Edition. And for this session, we're going to be talking about the web view and a new tool that we have called the Web App Template. Joining me today, I have a coworker of mine and friend, Matthias Shapiro. Would you like to introduce yourself, Matthias?
So I'm Matthias Shapiro. I'm a Windows and Windows Phone developer evangelist, and I'm here to just add a little bit of support, talk about the web view. Both on Windows and how we can use this the web view style of building our applications to kind of move in between devices, going from Windows to Windows Phone when the case is appropriate. So,
I've been talking about the web view element today, and in the HTML5 space, that is a brand new element for us. Web view is new with 8.1. But one of the reasons why I brought Matthias here is because we've actually been using the web view for development for years. Windows Phone has had a web view. XAML, you have a web view where you can bring in portions of the web onto your app. So although it's new in HTML5 platform, it's been around quite some time. So one of the reasons why we're talking so much about the web view is because of the ability to integrate the app with the web. So through working with companies here at Microsoft for the last couple years, looking at their websites, at their web apps that they've built already, we realized there's actually a lot of companies that have really great quality web apps. Applications that are delivered on the web but have great user experiences, provide great content for the user, and rival or even sometimes surpass the quality of native applications. And we thought, what do we do to enable those JavaScript and HTML5 developers who have built those web apps to be able to port those apps, bring those apps to the Windows platforms so that our users can find them in the store, they can have better integration points with the Windows 8 specific features, charm integrations, live tiles, things of those sort.
all right.
So the web view is one of those things. We're going to start and talk a little bit just about the web view. If you have a web app, you can open up a new project and create a web view and point it to either a local HTML file or an HTML file out on the web. So we've integrated this new element into an HTML5 project. So not only a XAML project where you have a web view, we now actually have an element in the HTML that is accessible when you're inside the app environment, the Windows Store app development environment, that you don't have on the web. So a web view actually allows you to do a window within a window, you could say. So the web view has its own set of events, it has its own methods, it has its own window object. For those of you who are JavaScript developers, you do a lot in the window object. It has its own navigation stack, so it knows to go forward, to go back, what the last page it was on, what the page next in the stack would be. And you can access all of that with HTML5 and JavaScript as a component inside of your HTML5 app. And so I have a little bit of markup on the screen. I think that'll say a little bit better. So inside of our body tag, sometimes you would see an iframe in there that could load another element. Well, an iframe has many uses, but it doesn't have all of the features of a web view. It doesn't allow you to have that full window object or the history stack. So in this case, right inside of a div, we have an element that you see represented as x-ms-webview. The reason why we write it that way is so that it's clear to a developer that this is a proprietary element. It's an element that you find inside of the Windows development system that you're not going to find standardized out on the web. And you insert it into your HTML, do a source reference to, like I said, either an internal page or an external page on the web, and it'll load it right inside of your application. So let's talk a little bit about the value of having this. There are a lot of events that we have from the web view to get a better idea of what's going on inside the content in the web view. And I think, Matthias, I think you've got a little demo for us to kind of show us what some of those events look like. Tell us about the WebView events.
I do. Hopefully I'll have this up very quickly. So the WebView, the events we have in the WebView are extremely valuable. Dang it. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry for this. Okay. They give us a lot of information about what's coming in from our application or from the WebView as we work with it. And this is really great because one of the things we're going to talk about after we talk about the events inside the WebView is we're going to talk about methods. So the events give us information about what is the WebView doing at this moment, what sorts of things have already happened. And so what you can see here is I've simplified some of these events. So we can see the WebView will tell us when navigation has started. It'll tell us when the content has loaded, but that's different than when the DOM content has loaded. DOM content has loaded means the page has been pulled, but DOM content loaded means that the DOM has been downloaded, set up, it's fully ready formed to start pulling, right. start pulling and populating things like the images and the media. And once those images and media come in, we get to the navigation completed event. So we get a lot of information coming in from our WebView, giving us a kind of constant update of the status of the content that we're pulling in from our WebView. So with this little demo, we can just type in a website that we want to visit. And when I hit the Go to Website button, we'll start seeing all of these events start to pop up. And so it's a little bit hard to see because it happens so fast. But the first thing that happens is we get this navigation starting that lets us know the website's the WebView's gone out. It's trying to start pulling this information down. If we pull a more hefty website than MSN, like let's say the Huffington Post, we're going to see that it pulls in the navigation, the content loads, then the DOM content takes a little bit longer, and then but navigation, because there's so much media on that front page, is going to take a lot longer to come in. So it's still pulling media, still pulling media.
There you go, yeah.
The great thing about this is that because we have all of these distinctions available inside of the events, we can do a lot of stuff with our WebView when in terms of the methods.
Yep.
So we can act upon the WebView when the content is loading, or when the content is loading, or when it's already loaded. Maybe there's something we don't want to scrape for images until all the navigation is completed. All those images are in there. So it gives us kind of a fine-grained control over how we're working with our WebView.
Yeah, we have these same events in both C# and JavaScript. Mm-hmm. So as JavaScript developers, events are really natural for us to work for. A lot of times we're writing code that attaches to an event, just like we would have a click event or a pointer event that we would subscribe to. We subscribe to the WebView events. So it gives us the ability to know, like you mentioned, exactly what's happening inside of the WebView. If we want to load content in the background in a WebView, we can load it off screen or hidden, and then whenever we see that content complete event fire, we know we can then fade it in or do whatever animation. And it gives us the real fine control over what's going there.
Right.
Now, it's good to know what's going on, but additionally, we want to be able to control what's going on. Mm-hmm. So in addition to the events, we also have a slew of new methods for this WebView. And again, these methods, they're going to be the same on both C# and JavaScript, but it gives us the ability to pull info from the WebView. So if we want to capture a preview of it, if we kind of want to take a snapshot of what it would look like and use that later on for a transition or an icon or something of that sort, we can pull that data right off of the WebView. The ability to control the navigation going back and going forward. So if I have a WebView and I call the navigate method on it, I'm going to pass a URL inside of that navigate method. It's then going to navigate to the new page, fire those events that tell me it's ready. Well, I then can check to see whether it has the value of being able to go back, can go back true, can go forward true, and then I can navigate forward or backwards through JavaScript. So instead of altering the URL and having to manage my history outside of the web view, it has a history object itself, so I can call go back, call go forward, and have the web view handle that navigation.
And these events, or these methods, in conjunction with the events, are what kind of really elevates the ability to create an app with a web view inside of your application. It kind of gives you a lot more fine-grained control over what's happening on the web and enhancing that for
That's right.
Your application.
Yeah, in Windows 8, we didn't have a web view. All we had was the iframe. And as I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of things that the iframe is still good for, and I would use an iframe over a web view. But when I want to be able to control the content, I'm going to use the web view. So even things like being able to navigate to a local string, if I have an HTML string that I want to render, I can actually navigate to that string instead of a fully formed web page. It really it kind of completes the story for me. In HTML5, being able to have the web view inside of my app gives me the ability to integrate local content with web-based content and put it together for a real consistent experience for the users.
And so one question that I have around web views is, I know this more cleanly for Windows Phone, but within Windows 8.1, the difference between a web view and IE 11 that I'd run on my browser is?
So that's a great question. It's using the same rendering engine as we have in IE 11, just like the HTML5 app environment. It's JITted just like the browser is, so we get really great performance from what we have in there. One of the big differences is that we don't have a plugin environment inside of the web view, so it's a pure rendering engine. You can't use things like Flash. You can't use things like JavaScript. And you're also going to be using the IE 11 rendering environment. So you can't switch doc types. You can't render as IE 6 as you can with a browser. And when we're building websites, those tools are very handy because we don't know exactly what the client is going to be. Mm. But when we're building an app, we're actually building the client, so we can define it's going to render as IE 11. Right. So in a web view, that's the standard way of rendering it.
Okay.
Now, if you're a web app developer and you want to bring your app to the Windows platform, we're going to talk about a new tool that Matthias and I have been working on, along with a lot of other developers here at Microsoft, that makes that easier for you. And it's called the Web App Template. The Web App Template basically allows you to take your web app and then combine it with a bunch of configuration data about that web app. And then at runtime, it puts your website together with the configuration data using a web view and turns it into a Windows Store app. So when we were talking with companies who had these great web apps, we realized there's a lot of features that are going to be consistent for every app that has to become a store app. So you asked me one of the differences between the web view and the browser. Well, another one is in the browser, you have a back button. So if your user wants to go back to the previous content, they can hit the back button on the browser. Well, in an app, that's something that you would have to build for yourself, is a back button. Things like integration with app bars and nav bars. Most apps are going to want to use the Windows Store app style app bars and nav bars. That's what the users are going to expect. That's where they're going to look for navigation elements. They're going to want integration with the charms. They're going to want to be able to do search, and they're going to want to be able to do share. They're going to want to have live tiles. They're going to want to be able to do those RSS feeds or whatever their feed is for their live tile. And secondary tiles, allowing them an app to pin content directly to the start screen. So that's something that's very useful inside of a Windows Store app, not something that we can do inside of a web app. So we would want to build that feature in. And then offline support. Being able to have an experience for the user when they're offline is really important for a store app. You don't ever want to give a 404 to a user because they're offline when they're using an app. There's no be a very confusing experience for a user. So we allow you to either, at the very least, do messaging for offline, all the way to building a full offline experience for your users when they're not connected. So those are all things that most apps would need to build themselves.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, one of the key differences, or one of the key things that we bring to the table with the web app template is the fact that when there are a lot of really great web apps out there. A lot of great people do a lot of great work and build these really fantastic experiences. But there's still, in the user's mind, a difference between when I go to the web and do something and when I go to an app and do something. And we found that users tend to be, they get a little uncomfortable when you give them just a pure web application inside of an app experience, because it creates this dissonance inside of their minds about how am I actually supposed to be using it. So the web app template is meant to bridge that gap inside the user's understanding of how applications differ from websites. And the great thing about it is that we actually just take some of those things that your website already does and cast it in a different UI concept, a different UX concept, right, so that the users can go in there and get the fantastic experience the web app developers have delivered to their users, but inside of the context of an application the users are more familiar with.
So the web app template builds out all those things that most web apps will need. It also has a series of other features that are going to be popular for building out store apps. So being able to control the URL, being able to build in notifications, integration with authentication systems like Facebook, being able to manage the way that the website looks inside of your app, injecting CSS to hide elements that might not be necessary when it's inside of a store app, handling logging and errors and things of that sort, also built in the web app template. So you get the idea. What we've done here is we have a tool that allows you to focus on your web app, easily get up to speed in becoming a Windows Store app by building out a lot of that functionality that you're going to need for you, and then also give you the ability to build on top of that. It is a template. It's something that you start with, building on top of that to continue to integrate with other Windows features. So without further ado, I think it'll be a lot easier if we just show them how it works.
Yep.
So let's do some demos here. I'm going to start out, and what I'm going to do is, in Visual Studio, I've already installed the template here. And it's a Visual Studio template as well, so when I start a new project, you'll see I have a new template type that's called Web App Template. And so when I select this, I'll call this Test 1, selecting the new type of Web App Template, I open it up. And in the base template here, I have what I would expect, HTML and JavaScript, the same programming language that I'm used to writing with. But I also have in here is a config file. So when I open up the config file, what I see are a lot of values about my web app. Now this, what we have it pointing to by default, is our documentation site where you can find more information about the web app. Make this a little bigger here. And then I'm going to fill in information that will be added, will be mixed with the website at runtime to produce the Windows Store app. So first, let me just run it and show you what it would look like here. All right, so you see I had my loading screen, and then it loads up the web app template site here. I have my navigation. I have app bars, back button, takes this website, builds those features in. Now, what I'm going to do is to show you how this works, I'm actually going to open up one of my favorite websites here, Flipboard. And I'm going to now just take out the documentation site and paste that in and run it. And now you'll see I have the Flipboard application here. And I can run into there. Now I actually have a different version of Flipboard put together here that has this information already written in. So I want to go over this a little bit with the values that I'm going to put into my config file here. So obviously the base URL is where I'm pointing the web view. So this is going to load up my website. I also want to configure the charms. So first I have the share charm here. What do I want it to share? I'm automatically going to share a picture, a screenshot of the page, and I can choose what text I want to share with it, whether I also want to share the particular URL I'm on. And the great thing about integrating your store app with the web is every page in your app is now going to have an associated URL. So I'm going to be looking at a magazine in the store app, and it's going to have a URL that I can send to people where they can view the same thing on the web because it's just web content. I'm also going to then configure my app bars and my nav bar. So these are where I'm going to put either some keywords where I want it to perform a certain action, or it's going to be a URL. So each of those items in the app bar and nav bar are going to load a different URL in the web view.
And I'm noticing that with those icons, you don't have an icon URL there, which means that you're actually pulling in default, what we call enumerated icons that are in Windows 8. They're common across all applications.
Yep.
And so you found the one that fit the login appropriately and just put it in there.
Yeah, these are the icons that users will be accustomed to seeing inside of a store app. So it gives them a consistency between the Windows platform itself and your web app. Live Tile, what I have here is I'm actually pointing it to the Flipboard RSS feed. And then we simply take that RSS feed, we're using the Pinned My Sites website to then convert that RSS feed directly into a Live Tile feed. So you don't have to build anything new for that. You already have an RSS feed, add it to the config file here, and then that becomes your Live Tile data. You can always use straight Live Tile. If you want to deploy a Live Tile feed yourself, that's fine too. We have the flexibility to use the RSS if you already have it or build something yourself. Ability to send down notifications. I'm not doing that in this app, but I can integrate with the Azure notifications system and be able to push notifications to any user that I want or to all my users through that. And we have the plumbing for that in here. Redirects is an important one because there's sometimes when I want a link to behave differently when it's inside the store app than I do when it's on the web. For example, I don't ever want a user in the store app to end up in the open web. So if there's any links that might take them out to a website that isn't part of my web app, I'll probably want to use the redirects to either send them back to a website that I use or to perform some sort of native messaging for them. Settings charm, important to put the settings and information about your privacy, URL and things like that, the places where the user will expect them. In a store app, they're going to expect them to be in the settings charm. So we allow you to configure that. And then we have a section here for styles, and styles is important because there's times when I want to change the way that the web app looks when it's inside the Windows Store app. So I may not need the navigation because I have an app bar. I may not need certain tools because I have an app bar. So I can hide those elements. If there's other CSS that I want to inject when it's in the web view, this is the place to do it. And we use those web view events to know exactly when to inject the script in there. So what I have when I'm done here is a Flipboard app based off of the website. Now I'm going to take you back real quick to what that website looks like in the browser. It's a good experience here, but we've customized it a little bit for the web. I'm going to click into one of these magazines. I get a full page experience. It works great with touch, works great with the mouse. And so I have this Flipboard experience that was built for the web as a Windows Store app. It's going to resize properly when it's in the Store app. I have my navigation built in. have the app bar, can share and things of that sort, all done by information I put inside that config file. I want to show you one more example before I pass it over to you, Matthias. We do a lot of shopping in my family. Hobby Lobby is a great place for you to find some of those crafty type of supplies. They've got a great website with a lot of content on it. So I want to show you what this looks like with the web app template. So we actually have a bit of a different experience here for Hobby Lobby. We have this landing page that lets you dig into the different sections. We have the navigation to go through their different categories. Back button to take you back to there. If I want to, let's see here, go into the baking and then pin this on the screen, I can do that, pin that to my start screen. So I have all those features, and it actually looks quite different than the website does. And we did two things in particular. One, we've injected CSS in here to remove all the content that isn't necessary when it's inside of a Windows Store app. But additionally, we actually built out a native homepage for this. And you'll see one of the differences here in my home URL section here. I'm actually pointing to a local page. So I have a local hub page here that we've built in HTML, and this acts as the landing page. So I thought this would be a good example because it's important to note that you're in a native environment here. If you want to use some native pages, use some web pages, you can do that, and you can navigate back and forth between your live web page that's hosted on your website back to a page that's running locally in your app, and so forth. It gives you that freedom. So in this case with Hobby Lobby, we wanted a nice opening page that listed out all their categories, made it really clear to the user which areas they're going to click into. So we made that as a local HTML page, loaded up in the web view, and then it passes it on to the web pages after that. So it gives you a lot of freedom there.
Yeah, the thing I love about it is that it is, in fact, a web app. It is a template. It's not something where, you can go in there, you can just drop a URL in there, hit F5, plug and play, and off you go.
Yep.
In many cases, that's the template, that's the starting point. You've got a great web app, and hopefully the better your web app is, the cleaner and the easier the transition is going to be between your web app and getting it into the Windows or Windows Phone, which we'll show in a moment, application system. But if you want to take that experience and you want to move it a step further, it's very easy to do. And we're releasing the source imminently, I believe, but so that you can download it, and when you run it, you're going to be able to build on top of that initial experience, so you're not locked into having to change your web app so that it works with Windows 8. You can actually change your application, your deployment, so that you get this mix between your web application and your native application that just fits exactly the scenario you're trying to drive.
That's right. So if you're building for the web, you're not going to have features written out already to integrate with USB or other WinRT type of APIs. That really makes sense to write those in the local app. And you can do that. You can continue to develop on top of the web app template to customize it and build out the features that you want your users to have when they're in the app as opposed to on your website.
Right.
So you mentioned Windows Phone version.
Yes.
And I will say that's one of the reasons why we have Matthias here today, because there's not only a lot of great tablet and desktop websites out there that make good apps, but there's a lot of great Windows Phone apps. There's a lot of great mobile websites that make really great Windows Phone apps. So do you want to demo for us how it would work on the Windows Phone side?
Yeah. So one of the big things that we've seen as we've talked to a lot of customers is that if they have a great web app that works fantastic on a desktop or laptop browser environment, they probably have also given some thought to building an experience that works really well in a mobile environment. And so if your application is one of those ones where you've given some thought to a mobile version of it, then it's probably a really great candidate for the web app template that we've built out for Windows Phone. And what you see here, this is just the website for a deal site that I use called Slick Deals. You can see it works pretty well. It looks pretty good inside of a simple browser. But we have a couple of things here. We have a search capability and a menu concept, and this is of course all built up in JavaScript and HTML. That would work. It would be a little bit different than the experience we'd expect inside of an application. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up this same experience as with the web app template. And what you see is we've gotten rid of the search button because we can integrate into search. We've gotten rid of that menu, and what we've done instead is we've placed those menu items inside. And I'm going to. Oh no! I backed out of my browser, so now it's gone. But when you opened up the menu, you got things like popular deals, hot deals. You got the option to log in. All that information is right up here inside of the app bar, and it just takes us to the right places. And we've got the back button, works exactly the way we expect it to. The way we do this within the web app template is here's the config file. It looks a lot like the config file that Jeff just showed you. And right now we're using a slightly different config files for Windows 8 and Windows Phone. But as we move forward, our goal is to bring these into complete alignment. So you have one config file, and you're driving all of your devices with the same experience. And using the same config file. So if you make a change to it, it shows up in your Windows application and in your Windows Phone application. You see we have some customized icon URLs because we don't always have the same enumerated icon experience on Windows Phone. We've got. I just want to. I'm really, really happy with Jeff's concept of the custom CSS strings and the hidden elements. And so that's what I did here with the Slick Deals website. We've just got a couple of elements. There's a footer. Well, we don't need a footer inside of an application. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that. And then that search button and that menu button are just defined right here so that we can make them disappear, and then we'll reinsert them into the app bar and make it really that kind of true Windows Phone experience that really feels like it belongs inside of an app. When we'll end up pinning it to our front screen so that the user goes directly there whenever they want to go to that site, whenever they want to see all the best things, the latest things that are coming up. One tap to the tile brings them to a devoted experience right around that web application.
So the web app template helps you bring your web app directly to the Windows and Windows Phone store. It makes it easy to get started. It makes it easy to build on top of it. For web developers, probably the biggest thing that it brings is the ability to put your app in the stores. So being able to have your app discoverable in the Windows Store or in the Windows Phone store has a lot of value. A lot of times users go to the store first to look for that app. And you want them to be able to find your app there. You don't want them to find a competitor's app instead and go down that path. You want to be where the users are looking. And so this is an easy tool that helps you get your app into the stores.
Right. It really brings the experience that you've designed for your users and makes it a first-class citizen on the desktop, desktop and tablets, on the phone. It's not something that lives inside of the browser. It lives right there on the front screen in a way that they can devote their attention, their time to it.
Now let's talk about availability.
Yes.
So I'd love to be able to tell you can go and download this right now, but it's not quite out there yet. So in a matter of days, we'll have this ready on codeplex.com, where you can go and search for the web app template. And I think if you go search for web app template today, you see it coming soon. We wanted to have it for you today, but to be honest, we wanted to make sure it was ready first. We want to make sure that it had every feature that we wanted to deliver to users. Yeah. So we will be releasing that shortly, open source, for you to go and download and turn your web app into a Windows Store or a Windows Phone app as well. So let's do a little bit of wrap up. First of all, if you're a web developer who's thinking about bringing your app into a store, there's a video that you might want to check out on Channel 9. It's actually called Bringing the Web to Your App. It's a really great explanation of the web view and how that works in the different development environments. To sum it up, today we talked about different ways to bring your web app into a Windows app environment. First of all, there is the web view. If you want to build it from scratch, you can do that. We'll have a web view there for you to build around the events that are published from that web view to help you understand what's going on there, the methods that are there available to control the content that's inside the web view. You can build your app from start using your website. If you want to use our starter kit, the web app template, that'll be available shortly for you to be able to do that same thing, where a lot of that details will be done for you and allows you to just plug your information in, quickly get up going, and then build some cool features on top of that.
Yeah, and I'd like to put in a plug as well for if you want to use the web view, you don't have to use the web view simply as a stand-in for a full website or a web app. It's great for, we mentioned it just a little bit, but it's great for taking a string of HTML, inserting in. You can end up building components.
That's right.
And because you've got these methods and all these events, you can do this really impressive interop. And for someone who's really familiar with JavaScript development, it can actually act as kind of a stand-in for control development.
Right.
If you've got a great control that works great in HTML and JavaScript, you can place it into an otherwise C# or WinJS style application and use it to run just that. It's actually a much more lightweight than people would expect it to be. So it's great for a wide range of combined scenarios where you want to combine that native experience with HTML and JavaScript.
We talked a lot about using the right language for the right portions of your app. This is a way to give you the ability to write your app in whatever language makes sense,
Yep.
and then still use components of web, of HTML and JavaScript for different aspects of your app.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of freedoms here. We want to make tools that make it easy for you to write apps with the skills that you already have. So thanks for joining us for this hour. We were all excited to talk to you about this. We will be back with our next session at the top of the next hour. We'll be taking a meal break at that time, and we'll be back then. So thank you for joining us.